Back once again. I'm excited for today's episode. We get to really interact with our audience. Huge audience over there.
Thanks for coming out. Really
Yeah.
appreciate you.
Yeah. Uh,
Insert laugh track.
Episode 7, this is where we've really become delirious.
Episode 8, actually.
8? Wow,
Yes.
okay. Episode 8. Well, now we're just delirious and we're
Yeah.
pretending like there's an audience watching us.
There's
So,
always an audience watching. Welcome back
welcome
to
back.
Next Best Thought. What is your next best thought, Sid?
Well, I am fondly remembering when we met, all the moments that led us up to now. I know we talk about avoiding going too deep into the past. However, I think there's always some good nuggets there, and especially if it makes you smile. I'd like to talk about that. I think it'd be helpful for the audience to know what they're looking at. We are two fun, loving idiots, but we're also scholars in some ways, and also we like to have fun. So maybe I'll go first, and then we'd love to. I'll do a quick
I
intro.
will say that we are two fun-loving gentlemen. I wouldn't use the word idiots because a big part of what we do here is we go through heuristics of how to live life. And I personally think the language is really powerful. And the language you use to describe yourself is really important. So avoid that
Okay.
negative self-talk. I'm
Okay.
not trying to lecture you right off the bat.
No, that's fair. We could do more. Yeah, we could do better jokes than that. So yeah, why would we call ourselves idiots? I'm with you. We're two good-looking, scholarly gentlemen that happen to do this podcast together. So how did we get here? That's, I think, the question, right? So I'll go first. Let's start with the story. And then if we get into who we are, that's great. If not, I think that's okay. The story is what matters, right? So I met Andres. The backstory is one of my best friends was like, hey, you want to go to Japan? This was back in 2019. I think I was like a year or two out of college, recently single. And yeah, one of my childhood best friends was like, you want to go to Japan? I got a group of my friends from college. And at least in our childhood, I always thought this kid was a nerd. Like he's a very cool dude, pretty jacked. But I was like, and he's one of my best friends. So of course I love him and I wanted to go with him. I was like, do I really want to go with 4 of his friends? College inside jokes everywhere. It's just going to be lame. So I arrive and yeah, I didn't really think too differently at that point even. I was just like, okay, this will be interesting. But I believe someone in our group was like, yeah, let's just go get ramen and like really just go after it. And I was just like, whoa, I like this energy from the beginning. And then some of the moments I remember specifically for us, one is that we saw each other naked. So we were in an onsen together at the Matsuri Festival, which is like a street fest where we ate a bunch of great food
In Kyoto.
in Kyoto. And then the other one was I remember you and me did like a little side quest where we went all the way up to a temple. I don't think this was Mount Fuji. I think it was a different area. But we just went and you and me were just like, we took one more step and we're like, yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to get to the top of this. And everyone else kind of
Well,
bailed.
this was Mount Fuji.
It was Mount Fuji.
It was because I remember we saw some warning bears signs. Don't go through this area. And we were just like, huh, I guess we're going through this area because we have to. We're here now.
Why did the rest of the group bail on us? It was just you and
They were
me.
just tired.
They were tired,
Yeah.
right? And you and me were just like determined.
But
We're
this
like,
was this was Mount Fuji.
This was Fuji.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everyone else just like bailed. We were super hungover. Every single night
Wow.
we were there. I was just like rallying the troops. I'm like, we are going out every night. We did Suntory squats, which meant we would post up outside of a 7-Eleven and just kill a bottle of whiskey like together before we went out. And
Crazy.
it was crazy. We saw the whole place. We did it right. Okay, now those are my memories. Hopefully I didn't steal all of them, but what do you remember?
Not much. uh, there was a lot of drinking during that trip. We drank a lot and we partied a lot and we were belligerent and we were obnoxious and rude. We were doing pull-ups off the metro rail handrails and in front of the Japanese people. We were just absolutely wild. And this was right before COVID. So it was, I mean, things were different pre-COVID, of course, but I remember we were just having fun. I had just gotten through a huge breakup and I just didn't care about anything and I just wanted to have fun and forget my woes. And I think that kind of reflects why maybe you and I kind of bonded at that time, because we, instead of actually dealing with our problems, we would try to hide them under the carpet, dust them away. I really like this analogy, and I'm going to just bring it up even though we're talking about stories, is the analogy of the dirty room where you have a really dirty room, no, you haven't cleaned it in weeks. Your mom comes in and she says, "Hey, we have guests over in 20 minutes. Clean your room." And you're like, "Oh my God, I got to clean my room." So you have all this dirty laundry, you put it underneath the comforter and you like throw the comforter on top of it. You have the Pringles can, you put it behind your monitor or whatever. And it's just like it looks clean, like to someone who walks in, doesn't inspect it. Everyone walks, and this never happens, but your guest comes into your room and says, "Wow, you have such a clean room. Wow, good job." A week later, your room is dirty again. Your mom has come by and she says, "Hey, have guests again. Clean your room again." And you do the same thing, and this time you still had the old clothes from before underneath the comforter. You put more. Now it's like a lumpy comforter. You have even more Pringles cans behind your monitor. It's starting to smell, but it looks kind of clean. And when the guests come in, they're like, "Huh, this is pretty clean," but they can sense something is wrong. And this keeps going, and after a while, no matter what you do, it's not going to look clean. You can try to Febreze it a little bit, but it's not going to deal with the underlying problem that you have to clear away things in your room. You have to do some work in your life. And at that time, we were partying and going pretty hard, and we were bonding over the fact that we had trauma that we hadn't dealt with or even acknowledged that we had.
Beautiful way to trauma bond. I do want to squeeze in a joke here.
Please.
It was nice to hear more about your childhood. Thank you for talking about all the Pringles cans and everything that happened in your life. It was a great story. In fact, it was a good story. But yeah, I agree. I think that was like we both had just gone through a big breakup and like we were just kind of doing our own thing. And I agree. Both of us particularly were clearly looking for some clarity when we went on Mount Fuji, right? We just wanted to keep climbing. Usually they say like even if you're a big runner, I think there's some studies that say we're literally running away from our problems. And we particularly went extra hard, I think, and we were always like trying to distract ourselves, right? We were always looking for that next thing to do and keeping that energy. And what's interesting is, I mentioned this before, but I have bipolar disorder, and they say a lot of the dynamics behind that is very similar. When you're manic, you're basically pretending or hiding from the fact that like you're predicting that you're going to be depressed again. So you're like doing everything you can to distract yourself. And to me, it's like a similar mechanism. But this is about us talking and having fun. So I want to keep that momentum. We can either keep going on Japan if you have any thoughts, or we can move to the next big event, which is
Yeah.
COVID.
Well, actually, yeah, COVID was a big event. So I was friends with our mutual friend, and I were doing grad school together, a couple hours south of where Sid was living at the time. And we came to visit him for St. Patrick's Day 2020 to have a fun time and party and continue, hiding our emotions. And when we arrived, it was a complete ghost town in Chicago. I had never seen anything like it. The whole city was empty. And, maybe I know we're trying to maintain the positive energy, but to me, it felt like, in retrospect, it feels like a reflection of our internal state. We were kind of trying to hide our emotions and kind of cope in different ways that were definitely toxic. And the world almost reflected that.
Interesting. I just remember some funny moments from that time. Like we were all hanging out. One of our buddies put on Robbie Williams, and like we had to listen to this guy like rip his skin off on stage or something, watch these funny YouTube videos. And then that day we like went to a speakeasy in Chicago, a very famous one, the Aviary. And this guy we were with, he was like pretty drunk and just being a total idiot, like a crypto bro. And he like this waiter comes, he's like, "Yeah, I'll do the kind of tequila flight." So there's like 4 different types of tequila. Mezcal flight. And there's 4 different types of mezcal. And the waiter takes us through all 4 and is like, "Oh yeah, you should try these in this row." the guy takes them all, just dumps them together and drinks it. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's gonna be bad.
And it was an $80 flight.
Yeah, he was just being an
And
idiot during
he just
flights.
chugged this like fine mezcal that the waiter in front of the waiter too, just mixed them all together. And he had a he had a girl with him, and she just left. Well, I'm not gonna be with this guy.
Yeah, she was so embarrassed. And then we went out to eat at one of my favorite places, Gaijin, and they have like these scallion pancakes that are just so delicious. And all of us kind of, I think we were like not hungry or something for some reason. And then our childhood, our best friend, he's like, I'm gonna order something. So he orders it. It comes to the table, and he's like, "Yeah, everyone, you guys want a bite?" And this guy just like takes half of it, and our friend, being our friend, is just like, "Heck no," and takes it back.
What are you doing? Yeah. Also, at one point, he says to us, "I just paid $80 for a flight. Who's gonna pay for my Uber?" That is infamous scumbag Joe is all I'm gonna say. This is his name. Yeah, that was a fun time. It was interesting how after that situation, like the whole world changed so quickly. And we're just all under this incredible lockdown. And yeah, I don't think we did anything. We did do Puerto Rico.
I was gonna say, was Puerto Rico before
Yeah,
COVID?
it was before COVID.
Okay.
That's why I was like I was gonna say Puerto Rico next, uh, but yeah. So we also did Puerto Rico. We went to Puerto Rico for New Year's Eve.
Yeah. I don't remember that as well because remember when you and Raul found me?
Yes, I
So
was okay.
thinking,
So you don't know this, but so we were celebrating New Year's Eve on an island, Culebra, and we decided to just spend the night there and party until the morning, which was a terrible idea because we were all exhausted.
because you have to take a ferry to the
You
island
have to
and
take
back
exactly,
from the mainland.
and there was a beautiful beach, Flamenco Beach, something like that. And there was a tank, like rusted tanks, military abandoned tanks on it. We were climbing these tanks, and I remember feeling confident. I was like trying to approach women at the beach, and I never did, never, push boundaries more than I should have. But I remember later that night when we were celebrating, I saw one of the women on the beach, and she said something to me, and I said, I remember you. Of course, I remember you. I saw you on the beach, like you're beautiful or something like that. And she said, "Let's go. Let's come with me with my group to the beach after like it was past midnight." And I said to her, "I can't. My friend is passed out on the ground. I have to take care of him." And it was one of those moments where I said to myself, did I do the right thing? Am I living for myself, or like why would I do this? Like I could have still been there, just passed out.
The friend that was passed out was me. Like to be clear.
I mean, well, it all worked out. We ended up eventually leaving the island and experiencing COVID. Um, and then after that, I think we saw each other just very sparingly. I don't know.
Yeah, just to wrap that Puerto Rico story, I think it was a really good thing that he found me. You found me because I was kind of like on the ledge of this on the beach, like on the ledge of a cliff, like kind of hanging around,
Oh,
like pretty drunk,
you
and
were on a dock.
yeah,
You were like about to fall into the water.
yeah, there was like a group of girls that came, and I think they were like watching me. I'm just like, well, what are you doing? But yeah, you guys came and rescued me, and it was just around midnight, so it was pretty funny. That was just like funny that I was completely wasted. And then we rallied on and had a good time. So that was good. And then yeah, we saw each other pretty sparingly after. Next best trip, next best thought, next best trip was Brazil.
This is true. And before we talk about Brazil, let's talk about some of those sparing moments. So I vividly remember us. So
We're good. 15 minutes in and it's still working.
yeah. So I remember like I would come up to the city every once in a while. We would, enjoy the nightlife in Chicago. We would go to the pool, etc. But also, I think both of us went through our own phases where I was in a relationship for almost 2 years, and after that ended, I started coming up here more to Chicago and spend more time with you and try to mingle, make friends, which was around 2022. And then over the course of 2022, 2023, that's when we went to Brazil, which was 2024, actually, yeah, 2020,
This year,
this
it's
year,
February.
February this year. So, yeah, so what inspired Brazil?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it was time for us to catch up. We always said we would do like a trip after Japan, and it kind of fell off after Puerto Rico, actually. So I was like, it's time to revive this thing. And I realized at that point it was basically you and me that were down to travel. You had already been on this year escapade, and I think you were like, yeah, I'm thinking about, just stopping in Brazil casually after doing Vietnam, Thailand. I don't even know all the different places, but
A few places, yeah.
yeah. And so I was like, let's try it out. And it was for Carnival specifically. So like complete chaos. I started watching YouTube videos, and like in my mind, so much fear came up. Like I thought we were gonna like enter a war zone. I like brought a decoy wallet just to make sure that like if I get robbed right at the airport, I'm like good and I could just give this away. And it was just like so much different than that.
People were getting robbed.
Yeah, people were getting robbed,
Yeah.
but I think we had the best protection, which was we weren't drunk. We were
Yeah.
sober for all of Carnival, which was a very interesting experience.
It's a massive change from how we were interacted in the past, where we would only bond over our trauma and just try to shovel it away and pretend like we didn't have any problems. And now we were saying, can we enjoy ourselves and actually face any discomfort on our own and see if we can actually just feel comfortable in our own skin. And the thing about Carnival is that it's so chaotic. There's so much going on that you have to embrace the chaos. As a matter of fact, I saw at least half a dozen people with the words tattooed on their body, embrace the chaos, because it is chaos. And you have to be present in those moments. And why do you try to escape with, drugs and alcohol or whatever it may be? Well, because you don't want to be present. Because the present means sometimes you are feeling things from your past resurging. And right now we're talking about the past and we're remembering all these positive things. But those are positive moments where we were trying to blanket out everything negative in our lives. So I think it's really a testament of how much we've worked towards growing personally, independently, and utilizing heuristics that we each have developed. And now we're converging onto a point where we can say, well, I'm headed in a good direction now. And now I don't have to use vices or use, distractions to keep myself happy, to enjoy this moment, to enjoy life. Like life can be something worth enjoying. And as we progress in this, I think something you and I, we've spoken about this, is that we have friends from these times, former friends, that are still our friends, that are still in this downward spiral. They're where they are Febrezing their room, as I'll call it. And they refuse to acknowledge that they have any pain. And it makes us reflect and say, okay, are these people still in my life because they need help and I'm supposed to help them? Or they're a reminder that it is always at a moment's notice that I can revert back to someone that's sloppy and Febrezes my room. And if you would allow me one more analogy, I have actively tried helping my friends who I've noticed continue on these downward spirals by bringing up this one visual. And it's a very powerful visual. That's all I'm going to say before I say it. Imagine your perfect person, your spouse, your whoever. You have a person in your life, but usually I say this to my single friends who are not necessarily in an upward spiral. Maybe there's downward spiraling. Imagine your perfect person. They're home. They're smiling. They're warm. They're loving. You get home after a long day of work. You open the door. They're there. They're smiling. They're happy to see you. They're emanating love. And as soon as they see you, they smile at you, and they're so excited to see you. And they're holding something. It's a baby or a puppy, whatever you want to imagine. And it's really the little creature is so happy, the baby, I'm gonna say, is so happy to see you. They look up at the then they look up at you, and they're all just smiling, and it's just pure love. You come in, and then you unleash all your pain and trauma that you have refused to acknowledge, that you refuse to even accept or to even say that you have any. You've pretended your whole life saying that you have no pain, you have no trauma. I'm a man. I don't cry. I'm a man. I just swallow all of my pain. Really, what you're doing is you're passing it on to that scene. Do you want that? And every single person I've spoken to with this visual has said, no, I don't want that. And it is at least a step towards saying, okay, maybe I have some issues. Maybe my room is not clean. Maybe Febreze is not enough.
Wow, that's powerful. Actually, I don't think you told me this one. I really like it. It's like, look, all that stuff is still in your head.
But
It's going to get out.
you don't need it.
Yeah, I don't need it. I've literally seen the visual where everything is good. Yeah, I think nonetheless it's a good concept. And yeah, I think like when we reflect on all these travels, these are all the journeys to get us to here. And it's not like we're some enlightened people. These are all still challenges we have. And I think that kind of brings us to why are we doing this? Why do we spend our Sundays, whether it's on Zoom or in person, talking about this kind of stuff? Well, first off is full acknowledgement. We are not perfect. We're doing this so that we can reinforce some of our own learnings, our own best selves, and make sure that it continues to reverberate in our heads everywhere we go. And so that we attract that kind of energy and kind of focus from the community, from everyone else we get to talk to, this huge audience of people that have joined us today. And I think that's the first thing I'll say. The second is to continue building upon these ideas, right? Often I found the things you share, I then put into my own brain and I'm like, oh, wow. And like my own reality. And it's like, wow, that's an unlock for me. I'm sure you'll bring up clothespins and that's kind of part of this. The other, and related, I'll tell a specific one. Yesterday we were talking about how men seek, instead of trying to change something internally, they try to change the external world to cope with their pain. Whereas women do the exact opposite. They're like, this is an overgeneralization, but women often are like, I'm going to change how I feel. And that's going to make the situation around me so much better and brighter. And I realize like in so many ways, that's what I've wanted to do. Like I have some level of like trauma from growing up. And I was like, I want to create this app. I want to create this app. I want to save the world. I want to make so other families are happier. And I'm like, well, if I go back and kind of look at my own dirty laundry, like there's still some work to do there. Now, would it be awesome to make that impact? Sure. And I can strive for that. But like, really, if I want to impart that on other people, I need to make sure that I'm fully there. So I think as we talked about values previously, all is to say that's a microcosm for what we're doing as well, which is we project some of like what we want in our lives. And then some of it is aspiring to live by that. Instead of us spending, at least I feel like our time, maybe it's because of our immigrant backgrounds, it's like probably didn't grow up watching too much football, stuff like that. We spend it talking to each other and kind of reflecting on our thoughts because we have very different experiences, right? You, even from a work standpoint, you're a computational biophysicist, which is hard for me to say sometimes. Yeah, you're not alone. And I realized, even though you're a PhD and like what people I think would associate with that, so you're a fun guy, you know. I've seen you do some really questionable things that make you a real human. And at least from my aspect, it helps me break my walls too, because sometimes I'm stuck in my ways and see myself in certain lights or see the world in certain lights, and you help change and alter that. So I think this podcast is kind of a meeting of those two minds where we get to explore new topics from different angles that hopefully other people haven't really seen before.
I think with that, we can begin to wrap up and ask questions that we can take away. And I think it's really important. What we did today is we reflected. So we want to reflect on our past, but we don't want to dwell in our past. I really like this quote by Steve Savold, which goes something along the lines of, My past is only as relevant as it is towards providing me a much more bountiful future. The only things that are relevant are my present and my future. Your past doesn't have to define you. Your past can be, it's your past. You can't change it. You can't do anything about it. You can't really change your future, well, beyond the things that you can control. So if you dwell on your past, you ruminate on your past, you're not really going to change anything. But if you're here, you're present, and you learn to adapt to the things that are bothering you, or you address the problems in your past, that leads to a better present and towards a better future. And when you mentioned, wanting to build an app, wanting to help people in different ways, we played this game, the why game. Why am I doing this? Why do I do that? Why do I want to build an app? Because I want to make money. Why do I want to make money? Because I want to get all these things I never had as a kid. Well, why do I want to have all these things I never had as a kid? Well, because I'm living from a place of scarcity, or because I have traumas where I wasn't allowed to play or enjoy myself. And when you ask the why question enough, you get to answers about your past. Like, okay, the reason I'm like this today is because in the past, I had issues with being a kid. I wasn't allowed to be a kid because my parents were stressed about being immigrants or being under pressure at work or whatever problem you had. Your parents passed on their problems onto you, and you were not allowed to be a kid. And so now you don't allow yourself to be a kid. Well, obviously you're a grown up, probably most of you watching, and you don't allow yourself to play. You don't allow yourself to be a kid. And in a lot of cultures, we're told you can't be a kid. You have to be a man, right? But those things aren't, I would say they're archaic. And so the question I want to personally leave everyone with is, one, it's not really a question, but reflect on your past, all the good times, and reflect on it from the perspective of someone of, why did I do this? Why was I seeking out these behaviors? Especially if you've changed from your past. Ask yourself, why was I doing these things? And reflect. Say, why was I doing this? Was I coping? Was I trying to hide some feelings? Ask yourself, why was I doing that in the past? And then ask yourself today, what am I doing today to hide how I'm feeling? And why am I doing it? And what is the root cause?
Yeah, definitely. And just to kind of wrap that one, it's called the 5 whys. So it's a product principle. Anytime you hear from a customer, all right, tell me your problem. Well, that is just a starting point, a startup philosophy almost. So that's not strong enough of a why for you to sell whatever solution you're trying to sell. So it's like when you ask the 5 whys, then you start to get to the real pain points that help you present your solution. So I adopted it from that, and I think that's a really strong way to approach things. Because then, yeah, like you said, you get to the root cause. It's root cause identification. And I agree. I think like reflecting, what we did today was we reflected on the past. I think it was, at first I had some like hesitancy when you started to think about the negatives as well, because I have this like picture in my mind that everything was so great. And it was really great. But you're right that underneath it, there were some underlying issues that have taken us from, the past is the past. You can't change it. So it was like, it was there for a reason almost. It's like how I like to describe it. And we learned from it. Yeah, I think the question, was a great one. Ask yourself the 5 whys. And that's really all I got. So really want to thank our amazing audience today for being here. I think this was a really special episode. It reminds me of Impractical Jokers, where like they do the season recap, even though I never watch it. And I think it's corny. It's just like, oh, I just love your episode so much that I don't want to see the recap. But I think people are going to like this one. And I guess we know because we were in front of this insane audience.
Thanks for watching. What's your next best thought?
Thank you.